Hello and welcome to this history tutorial on Walter Raleigh and the attempted colonisation of Virginia. Today we will cover Walter Raleigh and his role in the attempted colonisation of Virginia and the reasons why the colonisation ultimately failed. In the 1580s, England tried to challenge Spain's dominance by establishing a colony in North America. However, creating a new settlement proved more difficult than was expected. By the 1580s, England had claimed some territory in North America but had never established a colony. As we know, during Drake's circumnavigation of the globe, he claimed a territory in California in the name of Elizabeth and named it Nova Albion. The English had also claimed Newfoundland in Canada. In 1583, there was an attempt to colonise Newfoundland by Sir Humphrey Gilbert. However, he was not successful. After the failure of Gilbert, and Sir Walter Raleigh, one of Elizabeth's favourites, was given permission to explore and colonise unclaimed territories. She wanted Raleigh to establish a colony on the Atlantic coast of North America, where she suggested the name Virginia. In 1584, Raleigh sent a fact-finding mission to North America. The fleet landed on Roanoke Island, explored the area, then returned to England with two Native Americans, Manteo and Wanchi. Those returning from Roanoke gave glowing reports of the region, which encouraged Raleigh to organise a second expedition. The next year, Raleigh sent 5 ships to Virginia, led by Sir Richard Grenville. 108 settlers tried to establish a permanent settlement on Roanoke, while Grenville went back to England for supplies. When Drake visited Roanoke in 1586, Grenville still hadn't returned and the settlers were low on supplies. Most made the decision to return to England with Drake, although a small group stayed behind to maintain the colony. A third expedition reached Roanoke in 1587 and found it deserted. It is thought that those that stayed in 1586 were killed by the local people. Around 100 settlers this time settled on the island and began to build a colony. They were expecting supplies from England in 1588, but these were delayed due to the launch of the Spanish Armada. When the supply ships finally arrived, the settlers had disappeared. They were never found, and Roanoke became known as the Lost Colony. So why did the colonisation of Virginia fail? One of the key reasons was due to inadequate planning. Instead of the planned 300, only 108 colonists made the journey. A journey that was made up of 5 ships that set off on the 9th of April 1585, with all of the perishable supplies on one ship, the Tiger. This led to the failure of the attempt to colonise Virginia because 108 colonists was not enough to establish a new working colony. This was made even harder as when the colonist arrives, it was already too late to plant crops to give them food to see them through the winter. The poor organisation had also packed all the perishable supplies onto the Tiger, which became damaged when it hit rocks as it came into land. A break in the hull let in seawater that ruined the food it was carrying, including the seeds for planting. The dried peas and beans were rescued and were edible, but they couldn't be planted. This meant the settlers had no chance of being self-sufficient and became dependent on the Native Americans for food, so they had little chance of making the colony a success. Another reason why the attempts to colonise Virginia in 1585 to 86 was a failure was because of the colonists themselves. The settlers were all men, half were soldiers, and there were not enough farmers. This led to the failure of the attempt to colonise Virginia because the soldiers did not have the skills to farm the land, and those colonists who were farmers were not prepared to do the work for the upper classes. They had left England to own and farm their own land, not to do the work for the upper class. Even though the colonists had a good mix of skills, many did not have the raw materials they needed to make the colony a success. This made it very difficult for bakers, weavers and stonemasons to make a contribution. Also hunters, as most of the gunpowder was spoiled when the Tiger damaged its hull, so food was even harder to come by. A final reason why the attempt to colonise Virginia in 1585 to 86 was a failure was the Native Americans. The natives on Roanoke Island were the Algonquians, led by the local chief Wingina. This led to the failure of the attempt to colonise Virginia because although Wingina was welcoming at first, he soon turned against the English settlers. The Algonquians grew tired of the constant demands for food handouts from the settlers, which the English needed to survive. There were also violent clashes between the natives and the English during the winter as the colonists wanted even more food handouts. Wingina attacked the settlers with some other chiefs, and although Wingina was killed, the governor, Ralph Lane, decided the colony could no longer continue and the remaining colonists left Virginia. Without either controlling or having good relations with the natives, it was not possible for the colony to be a success. In summary, by the 1580s, England was trying to challenge Spain's dominance in the New World and saw the way to do this as to establish a colony in the New World. Walter Raleigh was given the grant to do this and organised several expeditions to set up a colony called Virginia after Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen. However, the establishment of this colony proved difficult, and many of the reasons why the colony failed were due to the poor planning of the expedition. There were simply not enough men, and many of those who travelled to the colony were simply not prepared to work hard. They had simply gone to make their fortune and didn't consider that there would be hard toil to establish the colony initially. Add to this the lack of supplies and the reliance on the local population for food, the colony was always looking as if it would fail. To get further help, visit history.outwood.com, see your teacher in school, or check out quiz.outwood.com for those sweet revision quizzes. You can also follow the Outwood Humanities team on Twitter at OGAT Humanities. Until next time, that was a little bit of history.